Live to the heart of the capital where the inquiry is sitting. Newzroom Afrika's Ziyanda Ngobo is live for us from there. Ziyanda, good morning. The distance between Paris and Tshwane is 12,500 kilometers. But what has happened there seems to connect to what's happening at the inquiry itself and also concern Nathi Mthethwa in respect of what Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi had to say about him and allegations of political interference during his time as a police minister. Very interesting.
Very interesting, Imanu, but as those who are close to Nathi Mthethwa have been saying, it's too soon to tell whether or not there's a direct link that can be made with what Mkhwanazi had said about Nathi Mthethwa, in particular when it came to former crime intelligence boss Richard Mdluli, and how Mkhwanazi, when he was acting National Police Commissioner in 2011, he was called to a meeting by Mthethwa and the then Inspector General of Intelligence, Faith Khadebe, to drop the charges against Mdluli. It's going to be a story that will continue to unfold all those hundreds and thousands of kilometers away from the Republic of South Africa. But insofar as the capital city is concerned, the seat of power is where Dumisani Khumalo will continue with his third day of testimony. And Iman, lots of questions around the nature of these WhatsApp messages and how damning they could really be insofar as actually being prosecutable. You'll remember that the terms of reference allow for the Commission to refer cases for further investigation to the NPA and other law enforcement agencies. And let's bring in Eldred de Klerk to talk more about this. Very good morning to you, because if you look at some of the evidence that has come out, it's shocking, it's astonishing, it's flabbergasting at some points, and you really get to see the nitty-gritties of the way in which the relationship between Brown Mogotsi and Vusimuzi Cat Matlala evolved. However, if you look for an example at the aspect of money moving from Matlala's account to this travel agency, Hotel Travel Agency, then directly to Brown Mogotsi's accounts, I mean, if it's not the proceeds of crime, what else could be possibly prosecutable?
Well, that is exactly it. We see a narrative and a story unfolding. We see monies moving around. That's about all we see. Evidence of what we don't really know. Evidence of a relationship of people exchanging money and one person being enabled to, in a position to give somebody else money. Some of it we know that the money was asked specifically for something. Whether it was used to that end, we still don't know. But South Africans need to be reassured, I think, Ziyanda, that when we see this evidence, obviously we're sitting and saying, wow, SAPS has the capability to now get to read our end-to-end encrypted messages. But they just need to be, I mean, I think we all need to be reassured that when the intelligence community go and intercept, track and trace messages or ask for electronic, for transcripts of electronic communication, they have to do that under the from the authority given to them by a designated judge. So they felt that there was something to be investigated. They understood that there may be a corrupt relationship, that the money in fact could be used for came from a source that was worrisome and was used for nefarious means.
Yes.
They linked that to the idea of tenders.
Yes.
They linked to the idea of extortion, because somebody was saying, if you don't this, I will go to the media, and or political influence. Now, supporting a political party in and of itself and giving money, that is not a problem. It's up to the political party to ensure, or political person or representative to ensure that the money they receive is not from the proceeds of crime, and it doesn't unduly exercise influence over them. So everybody in that account, in that troika that has emerged from this, has to now come and tell their own story.
But I mean, there's still going to be evidence that is going to be given in camera. Could that possibly be where we get more detail? Because that's when the name of Major General Feroz Khan came up, and Khumalo said he would then tell them, the commissioners that is in camera, about the conversations that Khan and Matlala were having. By the way, Khan has also been linked to other political parties, so it's not just this one political party being the ANC that's been mentioned.
Absolutely, and it's not just about monies moving, it's also about people being in possession of classified documents that they shouldn't be in possession of.
Which Khumalo says Brown Mogotsi was in possession
Absolutely. So who gave it? Where did it come from? And needed to come within in the police. It's also about officers we hear in IPID and within the South African Police Service itself, and maybe even in crime intelligence, who were leaking information, who were passing on information or passing on documents. So all of that, as Major General Khumalo was saying, in their next line of testimony, they may name more names because internal processes within the South African Police Service against those officers and internal investigations continue. So nothing stopped simply because he came here and told us one part of the story.
Speaking of parts of the story, what I found curious, Eldred, was at a later stage, you start to see some kind of a fallout between Matlala and Mogotsi. The one threatens to say, I'm going to take it to court, I'm going to take it to the media. But then it's over this Medicare tender of 360 million rand. And Matlala, who refers to himself as Dlamini because of the issue of his passports, but he then talks about how it's coming from your side, meaning the Senzo Mkono, 4 days after News 24 reported on its investigation into the SAPS tender, he called for it to be investigated. Now, if Brown Mogotsi and Senzo Mkono are really that aligned, surely Mkono wouldn't have done that. I mean, are we dealing with a political swindler in the form of Brown Mogotsi?
Well, whether he'll ever present himself for public scrutiny and come tell his own story, maybe whoever advises him in legal counsel to say, please don't do that, because they have to actually have compounding evidence to drag you into court. And all we've seen now is that there's been an attempt to influence the public narrative about him, to try to tell one side of the story. And if the minister, and now the suspended minister, was in fact in cahoots with somebody, indeed, why would he stop and ask for an investigation into a particular tender? That won't be smart, because he's got nothing to gain then from that except saying, I want this investigated. And if it investigated, is that against his own friend or alleged friend?
His supporter.
His supporter who's sending money to do all kinds of political activity and ensure he gets into political office? We don't know.
You know what they say, there's no honor amongst
thieves.
Emmanuel, we'll leave it there for now, but plenty to talk about. 6 themes are what are contained in those WhatsApp messages as per what Khumalo told us yesterday, and we'll continue to hear those testimony, but a lot to unpack, and also really getting to the heart of whether or not any of this is prosecutable as per the terms of reference.
And Ziyanda Ngcobo is there. Ziyanda, good morning again. Pick up the story for us.
Well, Iman, what we've heard now is how Brown Mogotsi and Vusimuzi Cat Matlala were talking about intricate details and operations within the South African Police Service. And now what's yet to be proven is whether or not Senzo Mkono was aware truly of what Brown Mogotsi was doing. Why did he have access to classified documents? Why did he have access to the SAPS PERSO, which is the internal HR system that's meant to just be between an employer and employee? Who would have granted Brown Mogotsi that kind of access, and where does Senzo Mkono fit into all of this? And to help me discuss that is Eldred de Klerk. So there are 2 things I think that have been important. They've spoken, they discussed the disbandment of the political killings task team, which is pretty much what kicked all of this off. But what was interesting and concerning at the same time was the use of IPID and the abuse of their processes, and how Vusimuzi Cat Matlala wanted to open a case at IPID, but was told, no, you need to have an assault charge to make it stick. You need a J88, and we know that that's what you fill out. I mean, these are run-of-the-mill SAPS processes, but IPID has been under siege for a very, very long time.
Absolutely. However, just to take your earlier point, we got to distinguish, there's no way the minister would have, or the ministry should have, access to personnel records. So if it came from anything, it should come within SAPS, okay? So I think The minister, I don't think, will have access to that routinely, unless there's you ask
someone else working with him inside.
Unless you ask specifically for somebody's personnel records. So that should come from INSAPS. As far as IPID is concerned, you can go to IPID with a complaint, but if you say that a police officer assaulted you, then you need to obviously go and open up a assault case, have a medical certificate to back it, or some doctor's appointment, or something to say that, in fact, there are signs of an assault. This is where you laid the claim, and then IPID will pursue that. So that is the routine. Coming back to IPID itself, there's been heads of IPID that's been fighting for the soul of IPID for a very long time. And Robert McBride is the first one to come to mind. He's not the only one. Remember, for a long time, the budget of IPID, much like the budget of the police secretariat, resided within SAPS. The accounting officer would have been the national commissioner, who accounts for the entire budget that goes there, which means that if they wanted to do their work effectively and have the money and resource to do so, they almost have to go begging bowl in hand to try to try to get that money. However, it's been subsequent to that, given that fight and given the fact that McBride lost that fight, it was only after that that we then had the act that saw IPID as an independent entity with its own budget and its own accounting officer. Same with the civilian secretariat. What you alluded to, Zanda, and this is the worrying thing, is that we've seen with subsequent national commissioners and subsequent ministers that the capability of IPID and the staffing of IPID in its investigations, its research, same with the secretariat, that there's been this deliberate undermining and hollowing out of such vital components of the Department of Police. Whether it's been under the watch of a national commissioner, and remember, SAPS have also seen a number of national commissioners fall along the way, or whether it's been at the hands of countless ministers of police. And this says something about the culture within the South African Police Service that's worrisome.
I want to talk about that very culture, because it's not the first time we've heard about the politicization of the South African Police Service. The Madlanga Commission of Inquiry that investigated police killings identified the tender procurement system and, the politicization of the South African Police Service as one of the key things, the recommendations that would have needed to have been dealt with. Now, circa 7-8 years later, it's the same similar kind of discussion that we're hearing at this very Madlanga Commission. I mean, judging from the request for 10K here, 148K, it seems like it's a culture almost that is between businessmen, some within the South African Police Service, and even politicians, this nexus that we've seen being described to us. How do you practically unbundle such a culture?
Well, there's firstly the unhealthy relationship between the executive, your public representatives, and your public servants. So we have to unbundle that first and get that relationship on a professional footing, where a serving public servant can tell the executive no. So that's the one part of it.
So the Public Service Commission also enters there somehow?
Absolutely. The Public Service Commission has already got its code of conduct that has come in, and that's recent. That's not so long ago. That has to govern that and tries to strengthen and guide public servants as to what their relationship should be. That relationship extends also to other entities like those in business.
Yes.
It just doesn't talk about the relationship with the executive. So, but then we also have the culture within the police itself that has to be managed, and this is where your NDP, for example, 2030, and 2030 is around the corner, calls for the professionalization of the police.
Yes.
But it went further, for example, with other recommendations, and you spoke about a raft of recommendations where we said that we needed lifestyle audits, skills audits, and we needed integrity audits of senior police officers to ensure that we can be rest assured or assured that the relationship with other entities are not compromising them. Because if I, in my skills audit, is living a life that's above my income, where is that coming from? Because that's what the simple thing, the skills audit was supposed, the lifestyle audit is supposed to be.
But that also takes us then to my next point, which is around what we've almost sort of like on the streets, or what you would discuss at your dinner tables. But this is a picture that's been painted of how businessmen, or shoddy businessmen, entrepreneurs, or whatever term you want to use, having a direct influence on the appointments to key positions, which is exactly what this whole relationship between Vusimuzi Cat Matlala and Brown Mogotsi is showing us. If you go back to the testimony of Mkwanazi, and he spoke about how, the prospect of Fani Masemola being suspended was a good thing for him, because then it would mean his person would be there. We know we don't have a Hawk's Head right now. At some stage, the 6 crime intelligence posts were available. We're still going to have a new NDPP in January. How concerned should we be, and how do you manage that?
Well, we should be very concerned. And this is something that, again, goes back to when the then Minister, Fikile Mbalula, was trying to get the National Commissioner to say, when you make irregular appointments,
yes,
even though it's within your purview, please run it past my office so that I can understand why these appointments was done. The running joke is that whenever you become a National Commissioner, you will ensure that you have your people around you. Now, we're not quite sure what your people mean.
Right.
It may be people that you have a relationship, whose competency you trust, whose integrity is beyond question. We hope those are the conditions as to why they're your people. Now we're finding out that your people may mean something completely different. So we have to revisit them. What authority does the National Commissioner have? And if there's where the problem lies, because you can circumvent HR processes and appoint somebody to a position without going through a transparent HR process for that appointment. That's one thing.
Yeah.
The second thing pertains to the Inspector General of Police. You know, the inspectorate, within the police, and the Inspector General of Intelligence, we're mixing that up a little bit,
yes,
but the inspectorate within the police. And we know that even the inspectorate in police has been demoted as a component. It's been hollowed out, and it's been devalued. So they should be looking at these internal processes, the professionalization, the efficiency, the spend of the budget, whether they're holding to professional standards.
Yeah.
So how are we going to hear from them as to why they can't get on and do the job that they need to do to ensure that the integrity of the police as a whole, as an institution, is actually intact?
The hollowing out of our country's institutions, people not knowing where the line should be drawn, are just some of the salient points that we've been hearing over the last 9-10 days, Iman, of testimony here at the Madlanga Commission. It's not a new story on our South African news landscape, but certainly one that keeps emerging.